May 5th, 2026, 2:39 p.m. When I was young, I told the adults around me how I hated my own youth. I wanted to grow up as quickly as possible so the words that left my mouth would be held in a higher regard. I felt awkward around my classmates and belittled by adults who saw my ambitions as something I'd grow out of. I hated my own youth. It was an excuse from those around me to look at our surroundings and not feel responsible. We were young. That's what we were told by those above us, those who had seen the world and were once young themselves. I would get off the bus and start to walk down the stretch of unmaintained gravel that led home, feeling stuck, feeling like I didn't belong. I was surrounded by the songs of birds, the roaring wind through the fields of wild grass around me, and I would write about my own youth, as if I were leaving an account for the last people on Earth about my easier time on the planet. I can't find that book anymore. I've gone back to my childhood home, which is full of posters and memories back when I had no responsibilities and somehow wanted them all. In a sense, losing that book is a tragedy. I would have loved to go back and speak with that kid just one more time, but this tragedy is also sort of my youth. I want to go back and talk to my younger self and tell them that everything will be all right, that it all works out, that I'm recognized, and that I'm loved. But that's never what I would have wanted to hear. I would have argued with myself about why I felt so strongly about the past, why I was walking down memory lane, and why I wasn't focused on the future. And in turn, I would have asked them about the birds, the wind, if I had made any new friends, knowing well that I have always been a lonely person. I miss those sounds from outside my window. There's a saying about stopping to smell the roses. I'm sure you've heard of it, but it's actually an idiom, a part of a much larger phrase that's been with me for a while. You're only here for a short visit. Don't hurry and don't worry. Make sure to smell the flowers along the way. I hurried through my youth as quickly as I could. I tried to grow more than what was possible. Against myself, against everything my naive childhood taught me, I think I would go back and tell myself to slow down, to be there for others and to let others be there for me, and to make sure to smell the flowers along the way. Fast forward about a decade, in 2 weeks I'll receive a master's degree that will allow me to help others, something I've only dreamed of being able to do in my youth. I'm the first in my family to go to college, to graduate again, and this all happened within 4 years. Against myself, against everything my naive entering college self would have wanted to hear, I would have told him to slow down, be there for others, let others be there for you, and to smell the flowers along the way. The average person lives to about 80 years old, and that's 4,000 weeks. It's not very long. The first quarter of my life I spent for the most part alone. I have beautiful friendships and a family that loves me dearly, but I still feel this overwhelming sense of alone. I haven't been there for others, and I haven't let others be there for me. So to my future self, I hope you've come back to listen. I've written a story, and I hope it helps you in whatever spot you're in. Once there were 2 neighbors in a small town. They were children, and one lived for tomorrow while the other only worried about the day. The first person was ambitious. In their youth, they described tall mountains they would like to climb and distant armies they knew they would defeat. They roared through their youth. They surpassed all their peers and eventually saved up enough to move to the city and try and make it big. By the time that happened, many people back home considered them to be wise. Meanwhile, the other person was considered a fool. The fool moved through their youth at a meticulous pace, slow, yet with purpose. The wise and the fool were once great friends, neighbors, until the wise got their chance to chase expectations. Meanwhile, the fool stayed in their small town after growing up, a town which is now far different from their youth. And that's when their father turned ill, then their mother, then a friend they knew but were never close with. Flowers. Flowers are what the fool brought, standing in a field full of people who had lived and others who had lived with less regret. Rain. It began to rain, slowly and then suddenly. The scent of flowers began to wash away and the songs of birds went quiet. They weren't quiet in the city, though. The city was loud. The hurries of deadlines, screaming tires, and singing birds. The wise couldn't make it back to town as they were far too busy with work. They felt as if they couldn't even fall a day behind. Flowers. The wise sent flowers, not knowing that their fragrant petals would be washed away in a storm. Days pass, then weeks, then months, Years go by until the fool and the wise see each other again. They met at a cafe back in their hometown. The fool was greeted by name and the wise wasn't. "I haven't seen you in ages," rang across the shop. To their right, sunlight shone through a pale window as the sounds of spring came shortly after. Birds. It wasn't just birds, but a cacophony of cars, people, trucks, and chatter, all from those crossing by. The town wasn't what it was, but it was different. Slowly, then suddenly. Flowers. To their left were flowers. They noticed the arrangement, and it was the same from friends many years back. Only a fool could remember the smell of those flowers from years ago. Years pass, then decades. They both raised families, made many friends, and they were now back in the same town in which they were raised. Neighbors, they were neighbors again. Their homes, while different, were in the same spot from which they were raised. Neighbors, and then no longer such. Slowly, and then suddenly, they were neighbors again. Their beds were now next to each other, and they spoke of life, of youth. "I saw the world, yet somehow I ended up right where I started," said the wise. "There's so much left that I want to see," they continued. "Don't worry, don't hurry," said the fool. "Life keeps moving, it always has." Slowly, then suddenly, they were neighbors, then no longer such. Flowers were sent to the wise. Their scent filled the stale, dull room. Petals, then no longer petals. Flowers, then no longer such. Slowly, then suddenly. They were neighbors again, even after the flowers, after the rain, the crowd. Then came night, the sun, and the songs of birds rang out through the sky as the wind cut through fields of wild grass. You're only here for a short visit. Don't hurry, don't worry, and make sure to smell the flowers as you pass through.